Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, "I shouldn't have said that"? In a world that rewards quick replies and louder voices, silence can feel like weakness. But the Stoics saw it differently. To them, silence wasn't retreat. It was mastery. A disciplined mind doesn't rush to speak. It observes. It listens. It waits. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm. Everyone is shouting, defending, reacting. But there you are, calm, still, unmoved. That is the strength of silence. It's not about hiding your voice. It's about choosing when your voice truly matters. Today, we explore 7 moments when silence isn't just wise. It's powerful. Moments when holding back protects your peace, sharpens your focus, and shows true strength. You might recognize yourself in more of them than you think. And the last one? It's something most people overlook. But once you understand it, it will change the way you handle conflict forever. So stay with me. Reflect. Observe. This might be the quiet lesson you've been needing. Number 1. When emotions are controlling you. One of the most powerful moments to choose silence is when your emotions are louder than your reason. We've all felt it, that sudden rush of anger when someone says something unfair, or that sting of hurt when we're misunderstood. The instinct is to fire back, to defend ourselves, to prove a point. But in those moments, you're not speaking from wisdom, you're speaking from a wound. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that when we let emotions drive our actions, we surrender control. And nothing is more dangerous than words spoken in anger. They often hit harder than intended and land where they weren't meant to. Once spoken, they can't be unsaid. You might win the moment, but lose something far more important: trust, respect, or even your own inner peace. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Staying silent in a storm of emotion isn't weakness, it's strength under pressure. It's stepping back instead of lashing out. It's giving yourself the dignity of a second thought before saying something you'll regret. Let me share a story. A man I once met, let's call him Marcus, worked under a manager who often criticized him unfairly, sometimes even in front of others. After a tough week, Marcus found himself publicly called out for a mistake he didn't make. The room was silent, all eyes on him. His fists clenched, his heart raced. Every part of him wanted to shout back, but instead he took a slow breath and said nothing. Later that day, after the heat of the moment had passed, Marcus asked for a private meeting. Calmly, he explained his side, brought clarity to the situation, and even suggested a better process to avoid similar issues. His silence in the moment of confrontation didn't make him look weak. It made him look composed, professional, and trustworthy. His manager not only respected his response, but eventually relied on him more than ever. So how do we practice this kind of restraint? First, pause. When your emotions flare, that's your signal to breathe, not speak. Second, ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow? In most cases, it won't. And third, remember the power of silence. Not every attack needs a counter. Not every insult deserves your energy. The truth is, silence gives you space to think, to reflect, to respond with intention rather than impulse. It's a quiet kind of strength, the kind that builds character rather than chaos. Master your emotions, and you begin to master your life. And sometimes, the first step is simply staying silent, until your wisdom, not your rage, is ready to speak. Number 2, when someone wants to provoke you. There are moments in life when silence becomes your strongest defense, especially when someone is trying to get under your skin. You've felt it before, a sarcastic comment in a meeting, a passive-aggressive jab during a conversation, or someone pushing your buttons just to see you lose your cool. Their goal isn't truth, it's reaction. And the moment you take the bait, you've given them exactly what they wanted: control. The Stoics warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That's not just a quote, it's a strategy. When someone acts out of pettiness, ego, or insecurity, responding in kind only mirrors their weakness. But when you stay silent, when you hold your ground without lowering yourself, you rob them of their power. People who provoke often feed off conflict. They thrive on your reaction. Your frustration becomes their fuel. But what happens when you don't react? When you meet their fire with calm? You shift the dynamic entirely. You're no longer dancing to their tune. You become untouchable. Let me tell you about Olivia, a woman I once met during a leadership seminar. She worked with a colleague who constantly tried to sabotage her. Subtle interruptions during meetings, backhanded compliments, whispers of criticism masked as feedback. One day, during an important presentation, this colleague tried again, interrupting her mid-sentence with a smug remark meant to shake her confidence. But Olivia didn't flinch. She paused, looked at him, and simply said nothing. She turned back to her audience and continued with grace. That moment of silence, measured, intentional, and powerful, spoke louder than any defense. It was the turning point. The room saw the truth without her having to explain it. That's what silence can do. It lets the noise reveal itself. So how do you apply this in your own life? Start by recognizing the game. If someone is clearly baiting you, ask yourself, what do I gain by responding? Most of the time the answer is nothing. Then embrace silence, not as a retreat, but as a statement. Let them expose their own intentions. And finally, hold on to your inner calm. Real strength isn't about having the last word. It's about knowing you don't need to. In the end, the person who cannot be provoked holds the true power, not because they lack emotion, but because they've mastered it. So the next time someone tries to drag you into their chaos, choose silence. Watch how quickly they lose interest when you don't play their game. Number 3, when the other person isn't listening. Few things are more exhausting than trying to explain yourself to someone who's already decided not to hear you. You speak with clarity, maybe even with kindness, but their mind is closed, their ears are shut, and their only goal is to win, not understand. It's like shouting into the wind. You give, but nothing comes back. In moments like these, the wise know when to stop speaking, because here's the Stoic truth. Logic is wasted on ears that refuse to listen. You could offer the most reasoned argument, the clearest facts, the calmest delivery, but if the other person is only waiting for their turn to speak, or worse, only arguing to feed their ego, then your effort becomes an offering to futility. Seneca captured it best when he said, "Arguing with a fool proves there are two." The longer you try to convince someone unwilling to be convinced, the more you entangle yourself in their chaos. Silence, in contrast, does something remarkable. It reveals the futility of the situation without you needing to say another word. I remember a story from a friend. Let's call him Theo. He found himself in a heated workplace debate with a colleague who was absolutely convinced of a false claim. Theo, being well prepared, calmly presented his points. He cited evidence, gave examples, even invited open discussion, but his colleague wasn't listening. He was only defending. The more Theo explained, the more twisted the conversation became. Then Theo stopped. Mid-discussion, he simply smiled, nodded once, and said nothing more. The silence stretched. His colleague grew agitated, looking for something to push against. But there was nothing left to fight. Eventually, the conversation ended, not with a dramatic conclusion, but with the quiet dignity of someone who knew when to walk away. That's the lesson. So how do you know when to choose silence? First, pay attention. If you're repeating yourself and the other person keeps talking in circles, it's not a conversation, it's a performance. Second, use your silence as a mirror. Let their unwillingness echo back to them. And third, protect your peace. Just because someone demands your energy doesn't mean they deserve it. Remember, you don't have to prove your wisdom to someone who's not willing to see it. Sometimes, the most powerful message you can send is your silence, because it says, "I value my peace more than this argument." In the end, not every conversation is worth finishing. Some are better left with a quiet nod and the wisdom to walk away. Number 4. When the truth will only cause unnecessary harm. We're often told that honesty is always the best policy, but the Stoics taught us to look deeper, not just at what we say, but why we say it. Because the truth, when used carelessly, can become a blade. And not every blade needs to be drawn. There are moments in life when speaking the truth serves no purpose but to wound. It doesn't bring clarity. It doesn't spark growth. It only causes pain, needless, preventable pain. In those moments, choosing silence isn't avoidance. It's discipline. It's compassion wrapped in wisdom. Epictetus once said, "Only speak if what you have to say is better than silence." That's a powerful filter. If your truth doesn't build, enlighten, or heal, what's it really for? Truth is not a weapon to be used in the heat of ego. It's a tool. And like any tool, it must be used with care, at the right time, in the right way. Let me share a story. A friend of mine, let's call him Adrian, was at a family dinner when a relative asked for his honest opinion on a deeply personal matter. Adrian knew the truth could be harsh. Yes, he had thoughts. But would speaking them in that moment help? Would it bring growth or just shame? He paused. He chose not to respond directly. Instead, he listened. Later, in a quieter setting, he offered gentle guidance, truthful but wrapped in kindness. And because he waited, the message was received, not resisted. He preserved both the truth and the relationship. This is Stoic wisdom in action. It's easy to speak your mind. It takes strength to measure your words. Not every opinion needs to be shared. Not every truth needs to be delivered raw. Sometimes silence is the bridge that keeps connection alive. So how do you know when to hold back? First, check your intent. Are you speaking to help or just to be right? Second, consider the timing. Even truth, when spoken at the wrong moment, can do more harm than good. And finally, embrace silence as a valid response. You don't owe everyone your opinion, especially when it risks causing harm without benefit. At the end of the day, wisdom isn't just about what you know. It's about how and when you express it. If your words won't improve the moment, let them rest. Sometimes the greatest form of respect for others and for yourself is choosing to remain silent. And if you've stayed with me this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment, share a moment where silence served you better than speech, and don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Your support helps bring more of this Stoic insight to life. Thank you for being here. Number 5. When someone is trying to manipulate you. One of the most powerful moments to stay silent is when you realize someone is trying to manipulate you. Manipulators are rarely loud or aggressive. They're subtle. They twist words, plant seeds of doubt, and create confusion disguised as concern. They know how to play with guilt, how to make you feel responsible for their choices, and how to turn your explanations into weapons. But here's the Stoic truth. Manipulation needs your participation. It needs your reaction, your defense, your justification. The more you explain, the more material they have to bend to their advantage. That's why silence isn't just protection, it's power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Silence is the safest reply to deceit." And it still rings true today. When you stay silent in the face of manipulation, you deny the manipulator what they crave most: control. You refuse to enter the game, and that refusal breaks their strategy. Let me share a story. A woman I once coached, let's call her Clara, worked with a colleague who had a habit of offloading tasks onto others under the disguise of friendship. "I thought you were the only one I could count on," he'd say. Or worse, "If you don't help, I might lose this client. But it's okay, I'll just figure it out." Subtle pressure. Guilt masked as vulnerability. At first, Clara would explain. She'd politely say she was too busy, offer compromises, even take on extra work out of discomfort. And every time, her words were turned back on her. Then one day, something changed. When the guilt came again, she said nothing. No argument, no excuse, just silence, and a calm return to her own priorities. The result? Her colleague floundered. Without her engagement, his manipulation fell flat. She had taken back her power without ever raising her voice. So, how do you apply this wisdom? First, recognize the pattern. If someone constantly makes you feel guilty or shifts blame onto you, pause. Ask yourself, is this about fairness or control? Second, resist the urge to explain. The more you talk, the more fuel they have. And third, let silence draw the line. It's not rude, it's a boundary. A quiet message that says, "I see what you're doing, and I choose not to play along." In the end, Stoicism teaches us that we can't control others, but we can control our response. When you stay silent in the face of manipulation, you reclaim your inner freedom. You protect your energy. You choose dignity over drama. So next time someone tries to twist your words or cloud your judgment, don't defend, disengage. Stay silent, stay grounded, and watch their illusion lose its grip. Number 6. When you need to observe first. One of the wisest moments to stay silent is when you're still gathering information, when clarity hasn't yet arrived and the full picture hasn't come into view. In today's fast-paced world, people rush to speak, to react, to stake their opinion first as if speed equals intelligence. But the Stoics would disagree. Wisdom doesn't rush. It waits. It watches. It listens. Here's the truth. When you choose silence before forming judgment, you create space for understanding. You resist the trap of assumption. You allow reality to reveal itself instead of forcing your version of it onto the situation. Speaking too quickly may feel bold, but more often, it reveals what you don't yet know. Epictetus said it best, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." This wasn't just a clever phrase, it was a principle. Talk less, listen more. Observe deeply. The more you understand, the more powerful your words become when the time finally comes to use them. Let me share a story. A man I once worked with, let's call him Elijah, attended a high-stakes corporate meeting where 2 teams clashed over a critical decision. Everyone was chiming in, voices overlapping, opinions flying. Elijah, however, said nothing. He listened. He watched body language, noted key phrases, and picked up on tensions that others missed in their haste to argue. When the noise settled, Elijah spoke, not emotionally, not reactively, but with clarity and precision. He didn't just state his view, he brought insight that reframed the entire conversation. His silence had power because it was rooted in understanding. His boss noticed, and so did everyone else. From that point on, people listened when Elijah spoke, not because he talked often, but because when he did, it mattered. So how can you use silence as a tool for observation? First, resist the urge to jump in. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it needs to be shared immediately. Second, listen with full attention, not just to words, but to tone, pauses, and what's left unsaid. That's where real information lives. And third, speak with intention. Say less, but mean more. Let your words carry the weight of thoughtful silence behind them. At the end of the day, silence isn't a lack of opinion. It's the sign of a mind that values clarity over noise. The wisest people aren't those who dominate the room. They're the ones who observe, reflect, and speak when the moment is right. So before you respond, take a breath. Before you judge, take a look. And before you speak, make sure you've truly understood. That's the Stoic path. That's the power of silence. Number 7. When peace is more valuable than winning. There comes a time when the wisest thing you can do isn't to prove your point, but to protect your peace. Life will give you countless opportunities to argue, to be right, to win the conversation. But before you step into battle, ask yourself, what will it cost me? Not every conflict is worth your energy. Some victories are hollow. They win you the moment, but lose you your calm, your relationships, or even your self-respect. The Stoics understood this well. They taught that the highest good isn't being right. It's being in control of yourself. And sometimes that means walking away in silence rather than fighting to be heard. Seneca said, "He who controls his tongue controls his destiny." That's not just poetic, it's practical. When you stay silent in the face of provocation, you're not giving up. You're choosing what matters most, your inner stillness. You're refusing to let someone else dictate your emotional state. Let me tell you a story. A woman I knew, let's call her Elise, got into a tense argument with a close friend. It started with a simple disagreement, but quickly spiraled into personal jabs and defensiveness. Elise could have fought harder, could have won by out-arguing her friend. But in that heated moment, she paused. She took a breath and said nothing more. She let her friend have the final word and walked away, not defeated, but composed. Later, once the emotions had settled, they revisited the conversation calmly. Because Elise had chosen silence instead of escalation, the friendship survived. She hadn't lost the argument. She had won something far more important: peace and connection. So, how do you know when to choose silence over proving a point? First, ask yourself, will this argument improve my life or just exhaust me? If the answer is the latter, it's not worth it. Second, consider the long-term impact. Will this matter a week from now? A month? A year? If not, walk away. And finally, remember that real strength is quiet. It's not about having the last word. It's about knowing you don't need it. The truth is, the person who doesn't feel the need to win every argument is truly free. Free from ego, free from pointless conflict, free to invest their energy in things that actually matter. At the end of the day, peace is a choice, and silence is often the first step toward it. So, next time you're tempted to fight just to be right, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is this worth disturbing my inner stillness? If not, let go, because silence in that moment is the loudest proof of your strength. So the next time you're tempted to speak just to prove a point, pause and ask yourself, is this worth my peace? If the answer is no, choose silence, not out of fear, but out of strength. Because in a world that rewards noise, your calm is a quiet rebellion. Silence isn't about weakness, it's about wisdom. It's the mark of someone who knows their value doesn't depend on being right all the time. And if this message resonated with you, take a moment to like the video. It helps others find this calm too. If you're drawn to more timeless lessons like these, consider subscribing. There's much more to explore on this journey of inner clarity and quiet strength. Have a moment to share. Drop a quick "stay silent" in the comments. I'd love to know you're walking this path too. And remember, peace isn't found in winning every argument. It's found in knowing which ones are worth your voice. See you in the next video, where we'll dive even deeper into the wisdom that helps you live stronger, speak less, and stand taller.